going on, everybody? Welcome back to Unarmored Talk Podcast. We have another guest willing to remove her armor to help other people while living. You guys know the deal. There's a lot of turbulence while living. Them seatbelt signs will come on, but at least these amazing guests can give you and share with you how they got through some emotional challenges and thought through them to kind of reduce those seatbelt signs, if you will. And let's get some beverages being served at 37,000 feet. But before we bring on our amazing guests, thank you, everyone. Continue to share, continue to watch if you like watching on YouTube or listen on audio, download and listen. And don't forget to leave a rating, review. That's the only way I can get better. And I just thank you guys. And then on the charity side, we've raised a lot of money. If you guys go on to Still Serving Inc., that's www.stillservinginc.com. Check out the latest news and everything we've been doing, donating thousands of dollars to continue to make sure that when we die, our nation, the world, is in better hands with today's youth who will become tomorrow's professionals. So I'm done with the admin, done with that stuff. Mary Beth Lutes, welcome to Unarmored Talk Podcast.
Thank you, Mario. Thanks for having me.
No, you are welcome. And everyone, I get to see her too when I'm on base doing some, facilitating some employment workshops. So it's pretty cool to see, Mary with her professional self and awesome self who cares about people. But before I turn it over to our amazing guest today, she is a veteran. She served in our military. I'll let her tell you what branch. And she's an author and life coach, and she does more than that. Welcome to the show, and please, can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners and viewers, Mary?
Hey, I've been a life coach for about 4 or 5 years. I'm a published author. The book is called "Is This a Spiritual Awakening or My Bipolar?" I also am a Navy veteran, and I was a cryptologic officer in the Navy back in the 80s. And I currently work on base at Camp Lejeune full-time in their transition readiness services, helping to make sure that our service members have a good plan when they get out of the military.
Yeah, then what an important task. But you mentioned, let's get right into it. Um, one, you mentioned the Navy, and so just so you know, I have a special place in my heart for the Navy. I knew that. I just wanted you to share that because my wife's a Navy veteran, so I love sailors. I love you guys, and if I didn't say I love you, the bandwidth might get shut off because my wife, she is one of the most motivated sailors I ever met. But thank you for serving, Mary, and let's talk about it. You mentioned your amazing book, and then in that title you mentioned the word bipolar. What's the connection to you?
In the year 2000, I was properly diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And prior to that, they had diagnosed me with depression and anxiety. I had my first breakdown at 21 in college at the University of South Carolina, where I was in NROTC and had a breakdown and nothing happened. Didn't go to the hospital. I didn't do anything. I went to the chaplain on the campus and he just said, okay, don't hurt yourself and go to drill.
Wow.
So that's
wow.
what I.
So you mentioned you were accurately, right, properly diagnosed in you would say
2000.
Yeah, 2000. So between 2000 and when you were in South Carolina, how much time in between that journey?
A lot of years. I sort of learned to adapt. I learned coping skills when I was horribly depressed. At the same time, I developed a very bad drinking problem and used alcohol to self-medicate. And it helped a lot for a lot of things, and then until it didn't. And so eventually I got sober in 1993, and it took me 7.5 more years to recognize that I had a mental health disorder.
Mm-mm-mm. And a lot of times, I've seen, when people get diagnosed with something like bipolar, uh, they feel like there's a stigma, like, oh, I don't want that on me. Did you experience that?
I did. And at the same time, I was very open. I've always been very open about my diagnosis because people can't be afraid of admitting that they need help and having a particular diagnosis like bipolar disorder. Whenever you say, I my bipolar disorder, instead of saying it's mine, it's I have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder.
I like that. Wow. I like that. Don't say it's mine. Say I have this. And
Right.
then let's move forward. Right. Yeah. And so when that happened, what emotions did you experience, Mary, when the doctor said, "Yeah, we believe after all of these assessments and reviewing, examining your life, this is what we believe it is." What emotions did you feel after that?
No, I was so angry. I was so
Mm,
angry. I was angry at God. I was like, how could you do this to me? I already have a disease, that of alcoholism, that I have to deal with for the rest of my life. And now you're giving me this one that I have to deal with the rest of my life. But I have always been someone who tackles problems. And so the first thing I did was start reading every single book that I could find about bipolar disorder.
wow. Wow. And I love the choice you made instead of running from it. And you could have, but instead of running from this diagnosis, you said, "Okay, let me gain a better understanding of what is this, and what did you discover as you're doing this kind of research?"
Well, the first book that I read was called An Unquiet Mind by Kay Redfield Jamison, and it's her story. She is one of the leading psychiatrists in the world on bipolar disorder, and she has it herself. And so her story of a professional person having bipolar disorder and still succeeding in life gave me hope that I could do the same thing.
And Mary, I believe that this episode will give so many other people hope from just listening to you and you having the courage to remove your armor, to help not only those who may be diagnosed right now, those who may not even know they have it, and those who will get it in the future. So I love how you're reciprocating that to be able to give people hope. I-
Mhm.
The family structure, relationships. What happened? Was it very turbulent?
Yes, yes. I've been married 3 times. The second one only lasted 3 months. But
Mm,
part of my bipolar disorder was looking to fill that void inside me. And so I didn't have alcohol anymore. And I searched out. I needed to be needed in order to feel fulfilled.
mm,
But it was horrible because I'm very impulsive. It's caused me problems financially, in relationships, with my family. Today, I can say that we have an awesome family experience. Uh, my parents even spell checked my book for me. So they got to read a lot about my bipolar disorder and some of the wonderful things, not so much, that I did as part of my drinking and my
right.
bipolar disorder. Because I always say bipolar disorder to describe it is like Leonardo DiCaprio on the bow of the Titanic when he puts his arms out and he says, I'm king of the world. And when I say that to prior patients, because I was in substance abuse and mental health counseling for 22 years, but when I ask that question, hey, do you ever feel like Jack on the Titanic? And people are like, yeah, all the time. I said, and then what happens? And they're like, well then I crash. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, when I was
Wow.
working, I kept myself in my office and played solitaire because I knew that if I left the building, I would never come back.
Wow. And you mentioned the substance abuse and the alcohol and things of that nature. How much of that do you believe made it worse? Like, what at what level do you think it just made things worse?
Uh, Probably in college. And college was the worst.
Mm,
And what comes first, the chicken or the egg? They don't know. I do know that when you're treating someone with a mental health disorder and a substance abuse disorder, you have to treat them both at the same time. So in other words, if someone's going through a rehab or something, you want to make sure that it's a dual diagnosis rehab so that the person is getting treatment for their mental health disorder and their substance abuse disorder.
interesting, right? Not separately, not,
Yeah,
hey, we're going to try to treat this mental health disorder, and then let's figure this thing out, and then we're going to go after the substance abuse.
right.
You're saying, no, you got to do them together.
Mhm.
Mm, yeah. And especially young folks. When I say young, maybe early 20s.
Mhm.
Uh, have you ever witnessed, you yourself or anyone that got this diagnosis in their early 20s, and what would you say was the dynamics of that?
Well, while I was in substance abuse counseling in Pennsylvania, a lot of my clients, patients were college students, and my cats are running around all of a sudden. So I apologize if one
It's
comes
a it's,
in the
it's
house.
Unarmored Talk.
Okay. Oh. Um, so a lot of my patients were late adolescents, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I would ask them the same questions. And then if I heard some of the same symptomology, I'd say, I need you to go see our psychiatrist and see what he thinks.
Hmm.
But I've gotten very good at recognizing bipolar disorder in people. They tell me just a few key words and right away I can pick up on it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, you talk to someone and you'll say some Marine Corps jargon and they'll pick right up on that you are Marine.
Yeah, that is so accurate. And have you ever seen any behaviors that people may confuse another disorder with bipolar? Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, a lot of times they may say it's a personality disorder, borderline personality, or narcissistic personality disorder. You can have both, but a lot of times they'll diagnose someone with borderline, which there's really no medication for the personality disorders, and perhaps ignore the ups and downs that a person has with their hypomania and mania.
Hmm. Mary, I know I know for a fact you are doing amazing things. So I can actually say that because everyone I see her in person, in the 10 to 20,000 service members and families that transitioned out of the Camp Lejeune area. Mary's right in the middle. So I'm not gonna hold you too much longer so you can continue to do amazing things for those who serve. But looking back, if you had to give, and this is two-part question,
Okay.
what advice would you give to a parent who may be dealing with a teenager or a young adult who may potentially be, bipolar, number one? And then what advice would you give to someone who has been diagnosed with that disorder? Over to you, Mary.
Okay. So for parents, there are groups like Families Anonymous that will help them with managing their boundaries for the bipolar disorder. It's really hard in this country because we don't have no one can say, hey, you need to put this person in the hospital. I know he's my son. I know he's really ill. And until that person says, I want to hurt myself or someone else, then they can't go in the hospital. No one can force anyone to take their medication. They just can't do it. So bottom line is, if you have tried and tried and tried, it may be time now to set some boundaries and say you need to be responsible for your mental health disorder and for treating it or dealing with the consequences of not treating it. And to someone who has it, one of my favorite sayings, and I gotta admit, I saw it on Dr. Phil, but the dog wags the tail doesn't wag the dog. In other words, my mental health disorder does not control my life. I learn everything I can about medications, about symptomology, so that I can manage my disorder and not the other way around.
Mary, I always respected you, but it really just went the heck up out of the ceiling of my house, and maybe it's in the ionosphere for my level of respect for you. Everyone, you guys heard it. The tail don't wag the dog. The dog wags the tail. And like Mary said, she went through a lot of turbulence, but she chose to start to, wag that tail and take control of what has been put in her life. Mary, thank you so much for appearing on Unarmored Talk Podcast. Again, can you share with everyone how to find you? How can they get a copy of your book?
My book is available on Amazon. It's called Is This a Spiritual Awakening or My Bipolar? And it's a turquoise book with a very, a woman with a veil over her head. So what are we hiding in this? In that book, I do a pretty good explanation of the different kinds of bipolar, the different kinds of medication. And then I talk about some of the metaphysical things that can come along with that. And get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me at mary.lutes, that's MARI.LUTES@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much, Mary. I truly appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you soon on the base. But until next time, you guys know the deal. God bless you all. God bless your family and friends, and be safe out there. Have a wonderful evening, Mary.
Thanks. You too.